And when we talk about the future of employee experience, what does that mean for you?
So when I think about the future of employee experience, I look at it's that wherever there's a touch point with an employee, wherever there is a touch point at any part of the business chain, that there's fruitfulness, engagement, and the employee is culturally efficient and aligned, and you are connecting with the human in your business at every touch point. So if that for me is, if I had to define it from my own perspective, it's that everywhere you touch a human, you connect with them, you bring out engagement, you bring out the cultural efficiency. And what I mean by that is that they become culturally in charge and enthused, whatever the culture may be.
Okay.
And they're productive, and the business reciprocates accordingly. Yeah, I think that's my definition.
Okay, and what have you learned from your own journey that would you say is the most important for building a great employee experience?
So this is for me is very, very important. It's the holistic approach, and this is what makes building a strong employee experience difficult. Is there's actually a lot of moving parts. You can't just nail it to a candidate experience campaign.
Yes.
You know, attracting talent and doing a big sexy brand campaign. You can't just nail it to that. You actually have to look at everything that you're doing as a people team manager or a HR practitioner, or whatever your title is, in terms of people management. You have to look at the entire scope of things holistically, and then engage each point, making sure that you're bringing out the experience and you're aligning it. So for me, and I'm going to go on a little bit here, and then we can shorten it just now, but this is key for me. I coined a phrase or developed a model, whatever you want to call it, I call it the integrated community model of HR, which means that when you take all the elements of people management and you create community, you create a tribe, people will stay, people will advocate, and people will reciprocate. So in this model, and I'll just take you through it very quickly, at the core of this model is the cause. It's your way of work. And people are like, oh, you just think Simon Sinek looks cute in his glasses. But actually, he really, really was onto something. The way of work is exceptionally powerful because it creates an emotional connection with that business, and emotions will lead to experience.
Yeah.
So if you're emotionally charged and connected with, you'll begin to experience something. So for me, the core of any HR community model is the why of work. That business needs to know why they are doing this and are able to communicate that why. So you would start there. And then for me, there's these pillars that sit around that. The first is, how do you measure contribution, and how do you expect contribution both ways, business and people? Mm-hmm. How do you communicate care in the business? How do you congratulate people in the business? How do you lead people into philanthropy? Because, I mean, the happiness index says that when you're doing things for other people, the index is higher from a happiness perspective than if you're just doing it for yourself. So how do you lead people to philanthropy in the business? How do you build connections in terms of teams, platforms, and how do you onboard, etc.? So those are my key pillars. The conversion, care, congratulations, charity, connection, and contribution. Yeah. And then around that, you will start with your employer branding. You will talk to your brand personality and the position and who you're targeting in terms of talent and future talent. You then talk about your story, how you craft it, how you're going to tell it, what platforms you're going to communicate it on, how you're going to work it into the digital world, and then you measure the returns and what's happening around there. And then around that, you wrap your people analytics, your strategic data analysis and measurements and the hard tack. And then around that, you sit compliance. You know, that your standard statutory, I have to do this, and HR, tick, tick, tick. But the core is about building community, and then you wrap stuff around it. So for me to get an integrated total employee experience, I believe that model has to be affected. Obviously, it'll take time. That's not something you do overnight. But I believe if you build it like that, you would have secured all the touch points, and you would have done it in a very, from your why all the way through to even how you do compliance.
Oh, I love your model.
So,
It's great. I mean, it really
yeah.
covers everything.
Yeah, so that's for me. You can't talk about employee experience if you don't understand how to touch every point and how to integrate it. And it's not easy. I mean, it's not a
No.
really, and it's not a perfect science either. It's not a perfect science because you are dealing with people and personalities and shifting cultures and multicultures and in a business. But if you have a very clear set thinking of how you're going to build it, you're a lot better prepared. You one step closer, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, it does. And so what led you to develop this model?
Sure. It was just, you know, actually, to be honest, I think it was frustration. I think that, I mean, even with I started as a PA to the factory manager, and then they just had payroll really. And it was a journey of nearly 8-9 years of slowly pulling together the human resource function and finding there was just so much pushback because it's intangible, it's soft and all the rubbish. And it was a really long journey and a very intense fight to finally establish what I thought was, first of all, functional HR, and then secondly, wanting to move it to the next level where we take it into the experiential space, not just a function in a business. And just through that journey and just understanding and seeing the key pillars that built connection, that created experience, and understanding the importance of analytics, understanding the importance of employer brand, just the journey of seeing it and understanding it, I realized it's got to work all together, and you can bring it all together.
Yes.
Don't leave stuff out, because remember, we are running businesses here. So we can't be foolish to think we're going to go into a boardroom and just say, no, like, I just want people to like experience. And I'm not being, maybe I'm being facetious. We can't get upset when they can't catch the vision and they're not progressive and they're this and that. You're still running a business. So you have to wrap up building community within an actual business model where profit and money is key. It's not going to change. Do you know what I mean? They're not going to wake up one day all just purely altruistic, and you know what I mean? So you've got to be able to marry building community, connection, experience with bottom line analytics, measuring your ROI. You've got to be able to marry the two, and be quite persistent with it. So I think what led me to that was just learning as I went and discovering. So there was a bit of a long way around that answer.
No, but I mean, you know, I think it's something that people struggle with a lot. I mean, you know, we work in employee experience and from a consulting perspective, and it is very difficult sometimes to help people to package because a lot of people see it as a hard sell. You know, to actually go into and to talk about employee experience and to put it down to the business in a way that makes business sense for the organization can be quite a difficult thing to do. So I think your model really encompasses that really well.
Yeah, it's not an easy. I think part of the fact that it's a difficult sell is because there's such a large amount of education involved. Yes. And education takes time. To try and lead somebody through that learning and that journey to the aha moment takes time. And if you can get them there faster, you know, that would be optimum. But it's not easy to get people to understand intangibles without like taking them on a journey to get there.
It's changing mindsets. It's changing belief work. That does take time.
Yeah.